Hi and welcome. You are listening to the River District Podcast, and I'm your host, Viveca Gravel, Community Development Coordinator for the City of Owen Sound and the River District. And I am sitting here with my friend Aidan Ware from the Tom Thomson Art Gallery. She is the Director and Chief Curator. How are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming out. I really wanted you to come in today because I want you to kind of change people's perceptions of what an art gallery is. You yourself, you're cool and you're hip and those are the same thing, but whatever. And you're young and not what one would necessarily assume a curator would be, because people have this misconception that art galleries are a little bit stuffy and that kind of stuff, which they are not whatsoever. So I wanted people to meet you and to get to know you and get to know the Tom Thomson Art Gallery a little bit further. So welcome.
Thank you so much.
You want to just give us a little bit of an introduction about, some of the things that you do and all that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. I'd love to. And I joined 2 years ago, which was a really interesting experience for me because, of course, if we all reflect back, it was actually 2.5 years ago. And if you look at your calendar, you'll realize that the pandemic had just hit and literally everything had just been shut down. And I traded in laptops essentially from my former employment, handed in my laptop there and picked up one from the city. And so it was an unusual start for sure at the Tom, but I think what it did was actually give me an opportunity to really hit the reset button for the gallery and to work with the team to come up with a whole new vision for what our future would look like. And our vision statement is to be an open landscape for exploring art. And I think that encapsulates everything that we want to be, that idea of being open to all people, to have, everyone feel that this is their art gallery and they can come and have great experiences at the gallery that they'll remember for the rest of their lives. And really and truly, that is my goal. And so, yes, when we think about the perceptions of art galleries and what they might be older or, not as embracing, but we don't believe in any of that. We feel that art is actually a way of seeding really important conversations, whether that's about social justice topics. You think of Indigenous truth and reconciliation or Black Lives Matter, women's, issues and rights. There's so many things that art can deal with and start in conversations, and we want to be a center for all of that. Plus also, encouraging creativity at such a young age through art classes and tours, and creating connections between what we can do creatively, how we think, and how, our society moves. So, yeah, it's a little bit about my introduction coming to.
That was one heck of an introduction. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know that you've now grown my interest more and piqued my interest in the gallery itself. Before we started recording, you and I are having this wonderful conversation about the accessibility of it, not only from a physical standpoint, ramps and elevators and those kinds of things that you guys are upgrading or have upgraded, but also from a kind of a classist kind of accessibility. It doesn't matter who you are or where you're from, and maybe I'll break out into a Backstreet Boys song. I don't know. But it is for everyone of every age. And what is one of the ways that you guys are making it that way in terms of, what it costs to get in there?
So it doesn't cost anything to come. It really is free, and we do accept donations. But also, there's a really great membership program that is completely free to anyone who can get a library card in our community, and it's called the Open Card. So what we've done is we've partnered with the library, the Billy Bishop Museum, and the Marine and Rail Waterfront Heritage Center, and we all came together and we thought, why don't we have a joint free membership? And it's a great way of sharing and encouraging people from, whoever you may be, from whatever sort of background, that, you're welcome to come to our institutions. And this has been a huge success for us, changing our membership from being a paid, few hundred people who would give to us each year to literally thousands of people from our community. And what that's done is also encouraged the four of us to start working together and leaning on each other and creatively sort of thinking about ways that we can move together and have projects that are meaningful to our community. And so one of those, we just recently had a stakeholder launch in which we brought together various people and organizations from the community with an interest in pollinator gardens and native plantings. And so our concept is that working together, we can start to plant native plants and hopefully seed a pollinator corridor for Owen Sound. And that's just one example of how this open team, which transpired from the open card, is thinking about ways to really impact our community. So it's been so extremely positive, and breaking down those walls. I think taking our programs outside of the institution itself and out into the community is another thing that we've really been focused on since I've been there. We've completed a really interesting mural up at the Heritage Place Shopping Center. We engaged students to do a mural actually at the gallery, but it was all focused around their experience of the pandemic and what it means, like what essential means to them.
Okay.
And so really trying to engage people where they're at, and diverse groups, and getting outside of our own walls has been key to creating a much more sort of democratic approach to the art gallery world.
No, I love that. I have two distinct memories of art galleries. One is being in Europe and going to those and being told very, very strictly that I was not to touch anything under a threat of, I don't know, whatever. And then the second memory I have is being a child with my school group, I think it was. It may have been with Girl Guides, I don't know. And a group of us went down to the Tom Thomson, and we went into the basement, and there were crafts. And those are my two distinct memories as a child with art galleries. And I think that it's important that the children now start getting more of a feel for it. What is art and all those kinds of things. And, is it stuffy? Is it all those kinds of things? And, at what level can you interact with in terms of creation or with the pieces of art itself? I know that sometimes art is interactive. Sometimes it is not, and you're not supposed to touch it.
That's so true.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about the kinds of pieces that you bring into the gallery and kind of how you curate those pieces to kind of speak to the community as a whole, and gauge interest from everyone?
That is such a great point that you've just made. And I think there is a massive kind of movement around this idea of art that is experienced and not just looked at. And so we've actually done a really interesting project recently, which was we 3D scanned some of our Tom Thomsons as well as his painter's palette. And we have digital versions actually installed in the gallery right now on an iPad. So for those that are seeking more of an interactive experience and, that kind of touching and closer looking, they can zoom in, flip it around, and it's like literally in a 3D kind of way that they can examine and play with the works that way.
That's very cool.
I know. And so we're really seeking ways to build that experience, that sort of more immersive experience. If you think of some of the really blockbuster big exhibitions that have been out there, I think of like Immersive Van Gogh is a great example of that, right? So there's no doubt that people are craving that sort of extraordinary embodiment of the art when they come into the gallery. And so we do a range of curatorial focuses, I guess, in a sense. And we have everything from installation art, which is, more sculptural. It might be more conceptual and take up more space in the gallery, but it's not like wall works that are hung on the wall. And,
right.
But we do those as well, right? We are very focused on showcasing our collection, which is over 2,600 works, and it's an astonishing collection that has a foundation in the works by Tom Thomson that were given to the gallery by Thomson's family and friends. What people may not know is that the gallery was actually established and built by the friends and family of Tom Thomson, including members of the Group of Seven.
Oh, that's so cool.
And there's such a strong Owen Sound connection. Of course, Tom Thomson was often in Owen Sound. He grew up on the family farm in Leith. He's buried there. And so there is this extraordinary story of probably Canada's most iconic artist right here in Owen Sound. And people will literally come to the gallery on a kind of pilgrimage to see his work. We have the fourth largest collection of Thomson's work at a gallery in Canada. And so that's another big aspect of what we do. And we've also lately been moving towards taking the collection, which is also a large portion of contemporary art and artist work, and taking that into new contexts. And so thinking about, like, for instance, during the pandemic, we curated a show called Facing It. And we drew on works from the collection that, focused on mouths or, faces. And it was just this great sort of confluence of things that made us think about our bodies and how we were being asked to cover them up, or the kind of social protocols that had changed so much. Right.
Don't touch,
Don't
6 feet
touch.
apart.
Right.
Yep.
100%. And so it's a great opportunity to take that collection and not just leave it in the time period in which it was created, but let's give it new life. Let's bring it into the contemporary context and let it have, a new resonance for people.
And let other people who may have been more on the outside or more accepting of those changes see how it affected in terms of creating trauma or opening and enlightening for some people, but seeing other people's experience within that.
Absolutely. And I often say that art matters because, it really can change people's thinking and their lives, and it can give them access to conversations that they might not have elsewhere. And I really see that in terms of some of the Indigenous art that we've presented in the past, and I know we will be presenting upcoming as well. If I think of Brent Henry's work, which was very much about the residential school system and his family having experienced that, and us presenting it in, this really kind of bold way. And just to see him sort of move through that process and carry us with him through understanding what that impact was for Indigenous people was very powerful. And that exhibition was called A Strong Heart. And I often think about that because it resonates with me, the kind of endurance that, not only his family, but, all Indigenous people have had to have over the years. So, art has that capacity, as I said, to just, to dig into these things in a way that you couldn't otherwise.
Absolutely. In fact, the last time I was there, I saw a piece, and it was 2 masks that were built out of Chinese food menus. And they were kind of facing back to back, I guess, with long straps in between. And I'm not entirely sure if they were connected or not. And I walked by, I'm like, that's racist. And the guy goes, and he tells me the story of the artist, who I'm sure you know more about. And because he was of Asian descent, it's not racist. It's more about what he was experiencing during the pandemic, and, a nod to all of those kinds of things. It's like, oh, and it just kind of gets you right in the gut, right? I look at it and I know those things are wrong, but to kind of see the experience from somebody else makes it, so emotional and more intense and all of those kinds of things. So
the piece you're referring to is by an artist called Don Kwan, and he is of Chinese heritage. And when he was creating that mask out of the Chinese menus, he was actually dealing with all kinds of racism himself because of the fallout of the pandemic and the role that people feel that China played within that. So there was a lot of racism towards Chinese people at the time that he created that work. And it's called It's Been a Long Year. And the 2 masks are literally tied together. And it's sort of like us, we were all tied together in this, situation and not, sort of knowing what to do, and all the ambivalence and fear and anxiety that surrounded that, and which promoted racist attitudes and a lot of division and opposition. And so art is, trying to create those bridges to understanding. And I think he did such a beautiful job, and his work was in that exhibition, Facing It, but it was also part of our 55th anniversary show, which is where you saw it.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. No, I think it's just incredible that, Owen Sound, as, some people would assume, being a small community, has a gallery of such caliber, featuring so many artists. Now, was this artist specifically local, or did you bring him in?
We brought him in.
Oh, okay.
We did.
Now, in terms of local artists, I know that you do feature quite a few local artists from time to time, depending on the show and all of those kinds of things, of course. But as a local artist, how do they start to become connected to the Tom to potentially one day have their art pieces located there, if that's something that they want to strive towards?
Absolutely. So I'll just back up and talk a little bit about how we do create a balance across our curatorial program that includes regional artists as one of the priority focuses. So as I mentioned, when I started, one of the first things we did as a team was to create a new strategic plan. And in that plan, we identified the priorities that we wanted to focus on curatorially. And of course, truth and reconciliation was one, the environment was another, and regional artists was another one as well. So we have a heavy weight towards showing regional artists. In fact, one of the most recent exhibitions that we had was by Nicholas Bent, and he's a regional photographer, and really beautiful images that contemplate like what is wilderness and
I saw those as well, yeah.
Yes, exactly, with these lone trees that are kind of captured in slight motion by the side of the road. They're quite haunting, and they make us think about our considerations, like is that nature, are these trees lonely, do they want to be part of a larger forest, right? So this was such compelling work, and how this artist ended up being shown at the Tom was that he submitted a proposal to us.
Oh, I see.
And that generally includes like a list of 10 images or so, a written statement, artistic statement, and a bio or CV. But we do, secure exhibitions in a lot of different ways. We go out into the world as well, looking for certain things that we feel are really prescient and important to show at certain times. And so we definitely make trips to, Toronto and other places in order to, and other galleries as well, to source artists.
Well, Aidan, I have loved having you here, and unfortunately our time is running out, and I feel like we could talk for hours if we wanted to. You sound so passionate and so educated on everything, and really impassioned about art and bringing art to the community, and I think that the only way that people are going to get more of that is if they just walk in those front doors. Now, if they want to find you, what is your address?
At Tom Thomson Art Gallery. Really easy.
So that's on your socials. And what is your physical address?
840 First Avenue West.
Right beside the library.
You got it.
Right across from the river.
You got it.
Yeah, right across the river from City Hall and the market. Yeah. So you can't miss it. And there's tons of free parking. And again, it is free to get in. So the best way to do that is to watch your socials for any upcoming activity and all of that kind of stuff, and follow along with all the stuff that you post and events and things like that. Sometimes you host various events for different groups of people at different times and stuff. So it's good to keep up with all of that on their socials and, of course, on their website, which can be accessed through the City of Owen Sound website, owensound.ca. Again, Aidan, thank you so much for coming. This has been a lot of fun and very insightful. You've got some great words to be said about the gallery, and we're lucky to have you as the director and chief curator. Thank you again for coming in.
Thank you.
And as always, you can reach us on our socials at River District OS, and of course on our website at owensoundriverdistrict.ca. We'll see you next time. Thanks.